If somebody puts a silicone in their product, to me, that is a big red flag. If I'm in a body shop and they're not telling me that there's silicones as a protectant in that is horrible. And then you're buffing the car, and then you're supposed to, the directions say, fully wash with soap that whole surface before you move to pad number 2 and product number 2. Nobody does.
Yeah.
No one ever does that. So now you've got cross-contamination between diminishing abrasive and non-diminishing abrasive of the second product. CSI System 1 eliminated diminishing abrasive. So you're chasing that perfect paint. And the same thing in detailing. If a detailer who doesn't know how much paint is on that car starts to chase perfection and hasn't pre-warned his customer, then he's at fault for not being honest. I tell anybody that goes to any of our classes, you need to sit with your customer. I can give you anything, any level you want. I'm going to get paid for it. And if I burn through chasing what you want, it's not my fault because I'm pre-warning you. I'm going to make this paint thinner.
All right. So we had such a great time, Tom and I. And one thing that I love about living in California, regardless of everything that you see on the news, is that there's so many people here and there's so many things here. And Tom is one of those people. And so we've been able to communicate and talk and hang out a few times in person. So Tom, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Jimbo.
Glad to have you. And I just thought I should check my microphone just to make sure. Yeah, we're good. So today we're going to talk about developing a new polish, developing a new compound. Because after Tom and I had just a great podcast, which you could see on my channel, we started talking more and more. And I visited him a couple times at his shop. And I thought, I think this scratch and swirl one step product may be a perfect fit to my line. And then I was like, man, it'd be even better if we could show it and develop it. So this is kind of episode 1 or part 1 of letting everyone see how the sausage is made, I guess. So I'm grateful to you, Tom, for kind of being up for that. I think it's a unique thing that not a lot of people can actually show. A lot of people say, oh, we have a really long R&D process and, we R&D a lot, but they just say that, they don't show it. And so I'm really excited to show that, So, but before we get into this, something that you brought up, and you have all these little nuggets of wisdom and gold, and it really doesn't have too much to do with the podcast today or what we're going to discuss today, but I've never heard anyone talk about paint contaminants quite like the way you have. And so we have things like clay bar, clay mate, clay towel, iron removers. We have all these things to remove these contaminants inside the paint. But what is causing these contaminants? A lot of times we just say, oh, the railroad, it's rail dust and environmental fallout and all these things. But you mentioned something, and sorry for this long-winded intro, I guess, and I'll give the floor over to you, but this is so unique and so interesting. And I think you have a very good perspective on this because you're a car painter. And so can you kind of walk us through, what you feel these contaminants are and what is causing them?
Sure. And Jimbo, I really like your whole format. I love the way you podcast with all these other guys. So it's really my pleasure to be here. It's really fun. I guess, when we talk about, contaminants in on the paint surface, I'm a student of, I got to know why. I got to know why on everything, and I think I was one of those kids like, why dad, why dad, why dad? And, and I'm sure he got just absolutely sick of me saying why. But once I understand why, then I can go forward. It's like my brain gets stuck. I can't go forward. I don't even care. If I can't understand why, then I can't go forward. So my background is, working for my dad, and obviously cars had traveled on rails for a long, long time. But as you and I talked about this whole idea of paint contamination was something new to me much later in life. It definitely, I never, ever, ever saw rail dust or, paint contamination on a painted surface until probably the 90s when I heard about clay. And one of the, I don't know if it was a conspiracy theorist or, somebody who just came into my dad's shop and started to talk about what this was. And, and he prefaced the idea of catalytic converters. Now, we all know that catalytic converters came into the market about 75, 76, something like that. And I was already painting cars. I mean, I had already restored my own car at 15. So that would have been right at 75. So I was, painting before that. So, we paint a white car. Today, if you paint a white car, you have to use clay to take off the rail dust or paint contamination or whatever this is, because if you clear coat over that white panel, that those rust particles will be underneath the clear, and then it's a total nightmare trying to explain that to a customer. So the way it was explained to me was a catalytic converter gets to about 1,000 degrees. All of the moisture in the air and the iron oxide particles and all of that stuff gets superheated around that catalytic converter. And now you put millions and millions of cars on the road, and you have this atmosphere happening around the catalytic converter. And that is where these little iron oxide particles are flying all over the place. And when they land on paint, we all know the damage that they do to paint. They actually eat right through the paint. And that's why it's so important to take that off before you do any polishing. So when I heard that, it was like, what is this stuff? I thought we were cleaning up the air with catalytic converters, and we got some new kind of pollution that actually eats into the paint. So it was just a crazy thought. I don't know that I've ever heard a scientist talk about this. Maybe it's one of those things they don't want to talk about. But we as detailers, body shop people, we have to deal with that paint contamination. And, the products like what you're showing in your videos, the clay and the clay mitt and all those things do a great job at taking that off.
That was so interesting. I just never, I guess it's still just a theory, but I thought it was so interesting, and I've never heard it described like that. It's always been kind of described as it's just these things that are always in the, they're always been in the air. They always will be. Do you think there's anything to do, does that coincide with like single stage versus like base coat, top coat paints or anything like that, or not really? Like, could these?
Well, no, that's a good, that's a good theory. So let's talk about that. So, I was painting cars when acrylic lacquer was very, very popular. We did all of our spot repair on cars with acrylic lacquer. Then we came into partially linked paint like acrylic enamel that used an isocyanate catalyst with an enamel paint. And then we went fully cross-linked to acrylic urethane. So acrylic lacquer is very hard. And if those particulates were in the air as a little boy and I was painting white cars, I would think that those particulates would have eaten lacquer paint far easier than they eat these super strong urethane paints that we know today. I don't know that there's any cars out there that don't have fallout on them, every day.
I don't think so, because even when we talk about ceramic coatings and putting ceramic coatings on top of clear coat, everyone pretty much knows that you even get fallout in the ceramic coating. So you have they call it unclogging the ceramic coating, because there's a theory that when the fallout lands in the ceramic coating, it can change the properties of the water behavior on the coating. And so they call it unclogging. But I just never heard it explained like that. I never heard it talked about like that. And when you brought it up, I was like, wow, this is so interesting. And it does make a lot of sense. You know, it really makes a lot of sense. And so it would be interesting to hear someone else's theory. Maybe someone's listening to this or watching it and screaming at their, you know, screaming at their computer that we're totally wrong and we're so off base,
Yeah.
or we're totally right. I mean,
I don't know.
it's just interesting. And when you said it, I'm like, I've never heard that. And so I love presenting ideas, and it's just kind of how my brain works. Because it's funny that you said that, how, you know, why dad, and that's kind of, I had that same approach, but in school, and no one could ever answer it, and so it made school very boring to me, you know. And
Yep.
and people laugh, especially my family, like, oh, Jimbo, I'm surprised you like learning so much, you hated school. And I'm like, yeah, I love learning, but I hated school because no one was teaching me how to learn, you know, or could answer any question. So anyway, that's a whole nother 2-hour-long podcast for another day. So,
well, I think there is something to that too, Jimbo. And I think you're so good at, you know, just process, you know, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And that's why your podcast works so well.
Well, thanks. And that's kind of as a nice segue. I do have one more question in regards to the paint contaminants, but as a segue, I really want this podcast to be to where people watching it could just be a fly on the wall. Because like I said, when you know, we've talked and I've had these ideas of products, and one of my favorite things to do is to create new products and create new innovations. And the hard part is finding people that are on board to be able to do that. And I also think that I talk a lot about how it's difficult to create new products and to create innovations. And when I get frustrated, when I go to places like SEMA and I see these brands, these big time brands that have spent millions of dollars in these booths, and their latest innovation is to add like a plus sign to the end of their product, or like, you know, now even easier to use, now even shinier. And it's like, wow, the lack of innovation in the space is crazy. It's just, there is none, right? And I used to be real bullish on that, but then I realized, well, the reason why there's lack of innovation is because you have to have so many pieces of the puzzle come together all at once. And if I'm going to be bullish on, you know, basically talking crap on these brands for not innovating, I better be able to back it up if I have my own brand and be able to innovate, right? And so luckily, I have a good chemist for my current formulas. Where a lot of people lack a little bit is with compounds and polishes. But I do see this emerging kind of DIY market coming, and also I just think there is room for innovation in the liquid space, the compound polish. As we see more DIYers kind of enter the space, there becomes a lot more confusion too, over which one to pick. I mean, there's confusion just as it is. But I thought, you know, it's kind of also a full circle moment. I feel like I'm doing a lot of talking today. I'm so sorry.
No,
but
it's
also a full, I'm trying to lay the foundation for the multiple videos that we're going to do. So I'm trying to, I guess, spit it all out at once. But, you know, it's also a full circle moment for me too, because I was, you know, I loved System 1, which was your original company, you know, now CSI, for people that know. And so to be able to work directly with the person who developed, founded, and made all those products is like a total full circle moment for my own product line. And so when I asked you, hey, Tom, would you be up to kind of formulate something for me? And you were all over it. I was like, this is going to be awesome. So, but one more question I have about contaminants, because I think we talked about this in relation to a liquid. Do abrasives remove these contaminants? So can you polish out these contaminants or no?
Now, of course, this is all my opinion, and I would say no.
Okay.
Because if we were to magnify, and I always extreme everything. Whenever I'm trying to evaluate a problem, I extreme everything. So if we looked at that under a microscope and we blew it up to the size of a bowling ball, you know, that iron oxide particle that's laying in the paint, it's actually embedded in the paint. It actually eats a hole right into the paint. And anybody can do this. Just take a little microscope and do that on paint. If you try and polish around it, you will polish the paint around the iron oxide particle and not remove the particle. So it is really important that you remove the particle first and then polish the paint.
And so, yes. Okay. So clay helps to kind of attract that contamination out of the paint pour or that hole that and that's how it's working. Right. And even with, it's actually why I created one of the first products I launched, which is an acid-based, it could be a water spot remover, wheel cleaner, whatever. But when I was talking to my chemist who was formulating it, he said, because iron removers are very popular, but they're very expensive and they turn purple, which is very cool. But he said it's actually the acid, and maybe you could either agree with this or disagree. I don't know. It's just what I heard. But it's actually acid is the only thing that can dissolve, other than removing the contaminants with clay. What is actually removing them and those contaminants is the acid has to dissolve them.
Yeah.
And what is happening is the stuff that turns purple, the I forget what the chemical is that does that. And I can't even say it. I can't pronounce it. My tongue doesn't work when I try to pronounce it. But all that is happening is there's just a reaction happening that is making that chemical turn purple. But those products actually have acid in it. And it's the acid that's dissolving the contaminants. And then the purple is just a cool like visual reaction. And so that's why I went with an acid, because I'm like, oh, that'd be cool, because you could actually, my whole purpose in my product brand is to solve problems, not just look cool.
And I think you're right. I think acid would definitely remove metal particles. I mean, any of us that in the auto body trade using phosphoric acid or metal preps and things like that, you see it actually. It gets really aggressive with metal. You've got a paint surface and then you've got a metal surface. So it does definitely get aggressive.
I think that is why I enjoy talking with you so much and kind of working through a lot of the things that we've been working through. I just had a noise. I just want to make sure we're good. Is because your background being in paint and body is so like parallel with detailing, but then it gives such a richer experience to it, right? Because you see it on a deeper level. You see like your eye is the same, but then you're almost one deeper level, like in the conversations we've had, I'm talking about like very surfacey scratches, and you go, oh yeah, but what about a 1500 grit sand mark? And I'm like, that is way beyond what I even think of, so one thing or what I'm looking to develop is one thing that I think when I think of the most ideal polish or compound, and I actually just recently told myself this, is that I would never release a product. Well, this has been my MO from the beginning, but I would never release a product that I thought already existed in the marketplace that was perfect or that was close enough, right? That worked for me. And for me, my kind of benchmark is 3D1. And I think that's where my brain started to move a little bit and be like, hold on, maybe Tom is the source and the plug, I call it, right? Like the chemical plug. Because in our initial podcast, you talk about how Tunch picked your brain, right? And for those who don't know, Tunch was the owner, founder of 3D, who produces, to the best of my knowledge, 3D1. Yep. Right. And so my ultimate combo for the vast majority of situations is 3D1 with a microfiber Eurofiber pad from Buff and Shine. And so I thought, unless I can beat that product or find something to be better than that product, I would never release a product like I wouldn't release just a copycat product.
Yeah.
So do you know much about 3D1, or maybe you can go back to your days with Tunch and kind of talk about what that product is or was, or abrasives, compound versus polish? I've done so much talking and I'm embarrassed by it, but I just kind of want to give you the floor and kind of talk about, that's where it started for me. And so, yeah.
So, I mean, System 1 was this idea. There was nothing on the market that said you could do all the things that I wanted System 1 to do. And And then when we came out with it, and it answered so many problems. I mean, it just went far beyond anything that was out there in the market. It wasn't as aggressive as Super Duty, but then why did we need anything like Super Duty Compound if we had sandpapers, of 2,000 grit? Actually, 2,000 was as high as all sandpapers went when I came out with System 1. So I think Tunch really enjoyed, just how did I come up with this? It all falls back to me being in the body shop industry and just being absolutely frustrated with all of the problems that I and everybody else in the trade was having with compound. So I think him and I just went back and forth. How did you do that? And I believe he's a chemist. I believe he is. So he had great questions. I mean, really good questions. And
he just found you because of System 1? Is that how? Did you guys know each other before? Okay.
No, we didn't know each other. I didn't know anything about his company. I wasn't buying, I definitely wasn't using his products. I was using 3M. But I believe he wanted to come up with something better than, what was out there too. So I was probably picking lots of people's brains, but, I remember just having a great conversation with him up at his place and just going back and forth about, how I did this and how I did that. And, and he would come out with a lot of versions of the whole concept of what, System 1 was.
And I think he finally hit something with HD Speed or 3D Speed when that came out, which was an all-in-one, kind of the precursor. I look at it as the precursor to 3D One.
Okay.
Because what happened for me was System 1 found it. I mean, I was all in. I had the double-sided pad. It was. I remember it. Like you said, it was just amazing, right? Because there was no more like this, because I was just getting started in detailing and I was very confused over why would you use a heavy duty compound? And then you got this 3-step thing was very common, heavy, medium, finish. And I just always felt like that is so inefficient. And when System 1 came out, I'm like, wow, I could just have one. That's so great, And then when it was harder to get, I guess, System 1 and it kind of went away or whatever. I don't even know how I found HD Speed, but when I found HD Speed, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing because it didn't dust. It didn't, all that. Their biggest problem is that it filled, and there was this massive argument over, how much fillers are in the product. What makes a product fill? Because for me, Speed never filled. I used it on a rotary. I used it and it never really filled that much. Not like a glaze would, but what makes a product fill?
So, the idea of fill, and I think that question comes up a lot. Number one, there is no raw material called fill or filler.
Filler.
There's no filler.
That's what I want to do too, is break this. Sorry to interrupt, but I have to because it's the Tangent Show. But it's this is what I'm trying to get rid of too in this industry is the secrecy of these BS just terminology. And it's because I don't know better either, but if I could bring in experts like yourself to explain what it is much better than trying to get an explanation from a detailer, so proceed. Sorry.
No problem. One of the biggest problems with, let's just go back to the technology that 3M had. And again, 3M was the best products made before I came out with System 1. I would say that there was nobody making as consistent a product as 3M. The problem is that it wasn't, it had a lot of external solvents or smells. So when you breathe the fumes, you feel it in the inside of your nose. These products stick to the paint and do all kinds of things. So when I looked at the skincare industry and saw that industry doesn't do that. That industry uses, emulsion technology and water and an oil mixed together and totally homogenizes that product together where nothing's coming apart in that product. And I really love that idea. So that was my quest with System 1. Now, when you use any compound or polish that separates, this is a good indicator that you're going to get a lot of filling, meaning that that surface is going to change after you buff it. So you buff it, it looks perfect. And a week later, your customer comes back and says, "In my car." And it's like, well, you must have done something to it.
Right.
You got to come up with all kinds of excuses.
In a week, what'd you do? Yeah.
Did you wash it? Oh my gosh, you washed your car. And it's just an excuse for the poor product that really is damaging the paint. So by not having oils come out or solvents come out of the product, you lessen the idea of filler. But there are other fillers that people put in, and this is just my opinion. And
sure.
Every once in a while I get opinionated, and I'm old. I'm 65 years old, so I'm gonna be.
I get it. You've dealt with so many people. You're like, I'm tired of just idiots.
So, I've had, chemists involved in System 1 and in CSI, and a lot of them wanted me to come out with an all-in-one, meaning we want to polish and then we want to put some protection in there. Mm-hmm. So the only protection that any of us as formulators can put in is either a carnauba or a silicone. That's it. There is nothing else for protection. I'm going to put in a carnauba or a silicone. The problem, because I'm a polisher first. I'm not a detailer first. Mm-hmm. I'm a polisher first because I only want a super clean polish finish, and then I'll put lemon pledge on it if I want. I don't, the protection. I want to get the polish. Yeah, it doesn't matter what I put on as a protection. Obviously, all of us in this trade, we have the ceramic finishes and good carnauba based waxes and stuff. So it leaves a really hard shell on there. But I want to know what I'm getting first. Mm-hmm. So if somebody puts a silicone in their product, to me, that is a big red flag. If I'm in a body shop and they're not telling me that there's silicones as a protectant in that is horrible. One, I don't know what it's going to do to my shop, and
because they can get airborne from polishing. Airborne.
They definitely can. Okay. But they get on the guys. I mean, we have to be so clean when we go into the spray booth. The painter, and I had, lots of painters working for me, and some painters are super clean. Their hair is clean. They put a head sock on. Everything about them is clean. Most dirt in any paint job comes from the painter, not from the spray booth. So it's coming from his clothes. It's coming from his hair. It's coming from, when did he take a shower last? Who knows? But it's coming from him. So if the painter is buffing, oh my gosh, that's a serious problem. You're going to have all kinds of weird issues in the spray booth. And that's why
is it common? Is it common for, I know in the detailing space, and this is why I love having these conversations, because like I explained earlier, like you said you're not a detailer, you're a painter, but we take different roads, but we both want the same end.
Yes, exactly.
Solution.
Yeah.
Is it common for silicones to be in like compounds and not be said that they're silicone? I know we have like body shop safe dressings and body shop safe this and that, but is it common for, and I'm not saying 3D1 speed, we're kind of beyond that product. So not to discredit that at all, because I actually am a big fan of those products, but is it common for silicones to be in a product and people not mention that they're in a product?
Well, the thing that scares me about this trade is, and I think that's what's so neat about your podcast, is that there has to be some exposure to the things that we're doing.
Right.
If somebody is using silicone in a product, they would never, ever, ever put it on the, on the label, because the word silicone isn't, as a chemical term, it's not silicone. It is a big, long, giant word. And if you're a chemist or a formulator, you know by looking at the SDS what that is. But nobody's going to put that on the front label that there's silicone in that product. Even if a detailer, I think detailers are afraid of silicones too.
Yeah. Well, and isn't there a wide range? Like, is that a broad term?
It is
silicone, like a very broad term, because SiO2, which detailers hold in high esteem, is essentially a silicone, right?
Yes, exactly.
So it's like I had someone reach out and ask in my current tire shine if it was SiO2, and I'm like, well, that's a tricky, and I'm not a formulator, I'm not a chemist. I fully rely on other people for their information, right? And so, but when my initial thought was, well, to make a tire shiny, you have to have silicone, and technically SiO2 is a silicone.
Yes.
So technically my tire shine would have SiO2 in it, but it's not an SiO2 tire. It really kind of threw me for a loop. So that silicone is a big term, and then we've picked and chosen and been marketed to accordingly to what silicone should be okay and what silicone is not okay, I guess.
So way back, before I started System 1, I'm just a body shop guy, and I definitely, if I heard the word silicone, I'm running for the hills. Even though I didn't understand, there's a product called Smoothie, and it goes into paint, and it eliminates fish eyes. But the original can of Smoothie was pure silicone. Nobody ever told us that. It was absolutely a whole can of pure silicone. So you put it in the paint to smooth out all the fish eyes that you're getting in the body shop. So
got it.
When you start to hear about these things, and I know one of the big companies that was that we were using in the shop at the time came out with a tire dressing. And I looked at this tire dressing, and it looked like baby oil. And I'm like, oh, what is this stuff? And it was just pure mineral oil. So they were a body shop predominant product line, and they didn't want to put silicone in there. So they just gave us mineral oil. Well, mineral oil doesn't do much for a tire in a body shop. It's nasty. It's messy. It just didn't do anything. And that product line didn't last long either. But they were trying to be safe. They were trying to be safe for the body shop. We ended up coming out with a product called New Tire Lotion, and it's 100% safe for the body shop because the silicone that we use in it dries on the surface. And these were the beginning of true SiO2 products. And I think we were definitely at the beginning of, nobody called anything SiO2 when I came out with System 1, but because of the emulsion technology, I could claim all these products as SiO2, at least the protection products. The polish was a pure emulsion, had no silicone fluids in it at all. Because I didn't want any cover-ups in the polishes.
One of my bullish gripes that I mention often, because when I started working with chemists and formulators, and actually we've been working and talking together, a common theme that always gets brought up is that term emulsion, right? Emulsion. That's another word that I have trouble saying, right? And it gets brought up all the time with talking to my chemist, talking with you. It gets brought up all the time. Where it never gets brought up is all the brands claiming to make their own products. Never. Unless I'm just not, it could be, and I leave this to chance, right? Like you never see a red car until you buy a red car, and then
Yeah.
every car on the road is red. So it could be that, but I've been working directly with a chemist since 2016. He wasn't a chemist, 18, 19. And emulsion was a word that always got brought up. And I never, ever hear any product brand talking about emulsion. And it seems like it's the most important part of any product across the board when it comes to detailing.
It is. It's really important.
And I chalk it up
takes all the work. It really
takes all the work. But it seems
hard.
difficult. It seems like the most difficult part to get like the correct emulsion is the most difficult part, but it's the most valuable part of a product. So what is an emulsion? Is it water and oil mixed together? Like what is an emulsion?
So I remember, and I don't know if we talked about this on camera last time. I don't know if we did, but
we've had so many conversations, honestly, with people. We're trying to act like this is the second conversation we had, but we've had hours and hours and hours of conversation.
I remember when I started going to Cal Poly because I wanted to learn how to do skincare technology, and Cal Poly's not set up for skincare technology, but they would teach me skincare technology or making emulsions for the skincare industry. At first, they're like, "Why? You don't look like you're into skincare, Tom. Look at your wrinkles on your forehead.
That's what I'm trying to fix. Filler, emulsion."
Yeah, and like, what do you want that for? And and I explained it to him. And I asked him. I said, "How does this thing called emulsion work?" Now, this is the professor at Cal Poly. He says, "Tom, the best way for me to explain it to you is black magic." I'm like, "What?" Black? You don't understand it either.
Right.
You don't understand what's happening here. And he's like, "It is absolutely impossible to take a water molecule and an oil molecule and put them together. It's 100% impossible. So what we do is we bind them with this thing called surfactants. But you got to get the surfactants, the negative and the positive side of the surfactant, right. And there is so much math involved in just getting two surfactants to work together to bind up this water and oil molecule.
So it's surfactant really cool is a term that gets thrown around when people want to sound like a chemist. So surfactant maybe so it would, to get the emulsion, and I'm trying to understand this, to get the emulsion you need the surfactant.
Oh yeah.
Right.
You do.
So I look at it like
a binder. I mean, that's another word for it. That's a simple word. And remember what we talked about making mayonnaise, and maybe that would be a cool video that we do.
Yeah.
Because it's really simple. It's really, really simple with the technology that we have. We can buy at Walmart these little mixers. You take eggs and oil and a little bit of vinegar, and you put them together. It used to be that you had to blend them really slow because we didn't have these homogenizers like we have today. But at Walmart, you can buy one of these homogenizers, just throw the products together and dip it in there. And that thing, it's amazing how it comes together. It is, a whole bunch of mechanical things happening with the chemistry, and it locks it up and makes these just super creamy product out of eggs and oil.
So in that example, would vinegar be the surfactant?
That, because vinegar is an acid, it would just be called a binder. It's a binder now, but it's doing the exact same thing that I'm asking the surfactants to do. So when you dive into this and say, okay, I want to go to the store and buy some surfactants, and they go, okay, have you seen how many there are?
Got it. Okay.
There's an encyclopedia full of them.
Got it. So this is great. I'm piecing this together, because when people want to act like they're making their own product, like they really are, surfactant, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because emulsion never gets talked about, but surfactant gets thrown around like it's SiO2. right?
Yeah.
And oh, well, we updated our surfactant, but really the surfactant is important because it helps you get the emulsion. So I guess arguably it could be equally as important. But okay. Yeah.
Well, the
Interesting.
big thing, Jimbo, so if you do this wrong, you won't know about it for a while. You won't know about it for a month or
That's a
2
good question.
months
How do you know when
or
you got it
3
wrong?
months. Well,
Okay.
you have to do thousands. I have System One, the book that I have on System One. Because if anybody were to say, we invented System One, it's like, okay, show me your book. Because I have every formulation change, and there are thousands and thousands and thousands. Some days I would make 4 or 5 batches of the product, and it would fail. It would fail. It would fail. Then I start to get it to work, and then I would set it on the shelf, and it would fail. So separation happens when the chemistry or the math isn't quite right between the negative and positive on the surfactant. And you
Oh.
won't know about it for a long, long, long time. So you
Okay,
have
so
to test this stuff.
so this brings up this perfect full circle back to 3D1. So in my opinion, 3D1 with a Eurofiber pad currently is one of the best all-around solution when you're looking at a multitude of things. It doesn't really
Sure.
dust, it cuts really good, it finishes really good for my needs. I'm not in a body shop, it works really good.
Yeah.
I will say CSI cuts better, right?
Did I pay you to say that?
Did not pay me to say that. I will say, so one, there's a couple different things that I realized with 3D1 that I would like your take on. And one of them has to do with when I get to the end of the bottle, it seems a little bit more oily or more runny.
Yeah.
So could that indicate that their surfactant is off a little bit? Or, and I'm not trying to listen, this is not a free, R&D session for 3D
we need
either,
to get
right?
Tunch. We need to put Tunch in here. Come on, Tunch, let's go.
Yeah, it's we could. If he's listening and watching, I think that'd be super fun because it's very slight. It's not a lot, but I just noticed as I get to the end of the bottle, it gets a little bit more oily. So that, and sometimes, not always, but sometimes, depending upon the paint, I feel like I have to use more product to get it to work how I want it to work. Like sometimes overloading the pad.
I think that this has been a typical problem from all wax and polish companies. Definitely something that I wanted to fix because I had used, remember the wax shop?
Yeah.
Do you remember the wax shop? So they had a product, when you looked at it in the bottle, it was completely separated. I mean,
Chemical Guys has a product like that. I think they have a car wash soap. It's completely separated.
And I used a lot of wax shop products. I did. Now I didn't think about it, but when I got into skincare industry, and if I were to bring my wife a product and say, honey, can you try this? And it's separated. She's not putting that on her face.
What do you think the most famous term in all of detailing other than surfactant is shake well?
Yes. Yeah,
like the top of everything. Yeah. Okay, got it.
So I think that all of us, body shop detailer guys, moving into super advanced skincare industry. I think that we're all building better products. I mean, but that is definitely something that I looked at with System One because I didn't want any separation from the first drop till the last drop. And I had a lot of failures. I mean, lots and thousands and thousands and thousands of failures. I mean, I can tell you horror stories on just, way before we came out with the product. I couldn't believe the technology, and there's really nothing written. You can only formulate a product. People go to school, they become a chemist. My wife's a chemist, but that she doesn't have the ability to go in the lab and do what I do because I'm a buffer. So I need
Yes.
this thing to work. I mean, what, and I think it's like looking at a paint job, like, okay, how can I look at $100,000 paint job and go, what's the difference between a $10,000 paint job and a $100,000 paint job? You better
Yes.
be able to see the difference. If you
Yes.
don't try and sell this to a customer, because you won't be able to do it. The same with products. You got to be able to look at a skincare product and go, okay, I need to duplicate this technology. And that was the whole goal behind System One, is to not have any separation in the product at all, giving us a nice clean finish. And I think it was one of the biggest reasons why System One was so successful.
So by picking the right surfactant, that leads to the right emulsion, which helps to not have the separation.
Yep, gives you a really long-lasting finish.
You brought up a really good point that I try to explain, and kind of when you talked about it before, it was reassurance to me, is that, people hold on to formulations and they're so secretive about, their formula or which I understand, but so worried about things. But one thing I realized when I was consulting with Turtle Wax, because I figured this out too, and you just reiterated it, that sometimes the chemist will create something that they think will work, but it actually doesn't work in real life, right? So it's almost like, but then you got to have so many pieces of the puzzle correct, right? So you have to have the chemist that can make it. First of all, you have to have that idea, right?
Yeah.
I guess that's where it all starts, that idea. But then you need to have a chemist that can take what you're saying almost in layman's terms and make it. And chemist formulator, I guess we could get into the differences between the two, because I'm not real clear on that. But like, then you need to have a chemist / formulator that can take your layman's terms and think about, okay, what surfactant, what kind of emulsion do I need to make out of this, and then make it. But then you also have to have the user, like you said yourself, the buffer, the guy using it, to be like, hey, it doesn't work, right? Or it does work, or it does this, or it's too heavy. And then you got to be able to take that feedback back to the formulator or chemist, and they have to, again, almost translate to like, what does that actually mean, right? And how could I adjust it? And then it's like, this is insane, because people get so wrapped up in white labeling, private labeling, new formulations, blah, blah, blah. I happen to really like just creating products from the ground up, but it's really not even creating products from the ground up, because it's creating products from a foundational level and just tweaking them accordingly. But it's like, if you just think about how much time, money, effort, energy that go into this, on top of having the right people in place, it's virtually impossible to not just white label products. You are not formulating in your garage and coming out with 15 products at once that you formulated. I don't care what anyone says, but when people say that and they launch we've seen it recently, you launch your brand and you have 10 products and you claim that you own all the formulations. You don't. Maybe you do in purple, but you don't in green. You know what I mean? So when it comes to a product that I'm looking for, and you tell me if this is possible and if you think you can make it, and if you can and we could show it, this is going to be amazing. If we can't and this goes nowhere, Tom, we're still friends, okay? But if you can't, there's no hard feelings.
Okay.
On my checklist is, I want a product that doesn't dust. I think for detailers, that is the most important. I want a product that I want a one liquid product like System One, right? That you can put on a rotary and it works on a rotary. You can put it on a DA and it works on a DA. You can cut with it, but you can also finish with it. Similar to 3D1. I mean, honestly, I just, there's those two little things that I noticed with 3D1, is that sometimes I have to overload the pad. Sometimes it doesn't finish great on all paints. And it gets a little more runny towards the end of the bottle and doesn't seem to work as well. Obviously I don't want it to stain trim. obviously, what else? If you could coat on top of it, there's this idea, I think we talked about it, of like these primer polishes that used to
Oh,
be
yeah.
popular, where they, I guess we could get into this. What would, in your idea, before putting, because it would essentially, we're putting an artificial clear coat, so it's not too dissimilar to what you do with painting clear coat, right?
Yep.
So what is the number one thing that you have to do or make sure of, that the paint is clean or clear of, that these polishes may be doing to, if the claim is true that they are making the ceramic coating adhere better to the paint, what is that product doing?
So, I've seen some of these people selling this in between, a primer, I guess, which is, you're going to take a term from the auto body industry and you're going to move it in.
Welcome to the detailing space.
Now I'm going to detail cars and I need to do another step, and I'm not making any more money. I just have to do this to make it work.
Right.
To me,
because essentially, like you said, it's an in-between, right? You already did the correction. You're just like wanting to make, instead of an IPA wipe, I guess, you're wanting to make sure that the coating is adhering properly. Sorry.
And to me, it's just a way for them to quantify, explain to the customer why they need to charge this much money. But what's really happening is that original product, whatever polish they're using, isn't clean to the surface. And they have to clean the surface, so they want to get paid for cleaning the surface and taking the excess oil or whatever's on the surface off. So now you can put the ceramic coating on the top of it. And I know that and this is one of the things. I mean, I sell to body shop people. I sell to body shop owners. I sell to big manufacturing companies. Our polish is absolutely compatible in the spray booth. That means you can buff inside of the spray booth and not contaminate your booth. And when you wipe it off, it's squeaky clean, just with a rag. You don't have to do anything else.
Because you have the correct emulsion, right?
Yeah, because it's not oiling out. It's not oiling out. And we're using, and you've heard me use this term before, that we have a built-in soap. So the soap, the surfactant, goes in and cleans off anything that our product is made with. So we've got a squeaky clean finish. When you get done buffing with CSI, wipe it off with a microfiber towel, and when you run your finger across that surface, it's squeaking. It's not greasy,
literally squeaking, and that's how you know.
Yeah, it's really tight.
So what's happening is their polish or whatever is leaving some, so it's oiling out. Is that what's
oily? Yeah, and that is, so this is where the term fillers come in. So any of the multi-product systems, you have to fully lubricate a diminishing abrasive to get it to work. So now you're using basically a greasy oil mixed with diminishing abrasives, and then you're buffing the car, and then you're supposed to, the directions say, fully wash with soap that whole surface before you move to pad number 2 and product number 2. No one does. No one ever does that. So now you've got cross-contamination between diminishing abrasive and non-diminishing abrasive of the second product. CSI System 1 eliminated diminishing abrasive. That is a waste of time. I don't want that in my shop. I want a super clean finish. I don't want any cross-contamination, because all of these things would lead to me having swirl marks on Mrs. Smith's or Mr. Smith's car, and him coming back to me questioning, why am I even in this trade? My kid could buff better than you. I heard everything. It's like, it's not my fault. I buffed it. It looked great when I delivered it, but now
because
it's horrible.
Is it the abrasive then that is causing the swirl mark, or it's the abrasive in conjunction with the cross contamination between products that's causing it?
I have not seen a compound, and because I think if they did fix compound to start and finish, then they would have system one, you know. So I never saw a compound finish well. So now you have to go over with a second product and a third product, and so on and so forth. System one fixed all of that. The concept of system one fixed the idea of one single product to do everything. We're going to get maximum cut because our emulsion is really clean. It lubricates all the non-diminishing abrasives. We do not use a diminishing abrasive in our product.
Were you one of the first to use a non-diminishing abrasive? Because that's another term in compound polishes that's like crazy too, non-diminishing abrasives.
I never even heard the term non-diminishing and diminishing until I moved into the eyeglass and the the F18, F16 canopies. They only use non-diminishing abrasives. So I'm like, well, whatever that is, that's what I want to use. So, that was my path. All of these are like pathways of development. It took, I can't believe, I mean, I'm 65 now. I was 36 when I started this path. And I don't feel older. I look a lot older. I don't feel any older. But it was like, I wish I knew now. I wish I knew then what I know now. I wish that was possible. But you got to go through this time period. You got to go through this evolution of process to find out, okay, I don't want to go down that way. Because I was being told that this is the best that's out there. I'm going, this ain't good enough. This is horrible. I know my guys are good. And why are they having all these same problems? And I can't tell you how many of these polish and wax companies I came in and they said, well, you must be doing something wrong. I said, you go ahead and do it then. And they couldn't do it. I mean, never could they outbuff my guys, ever.
I am just, as an aside, I'm so incredibly grateful to you to be willing to share 30 years of knowledge and experience, because it comes through, and I think it's just an exciting part of the story, and I think that's what people want to connect with and they want to support, is people that are putting their best foot forward and all that. And I'm just trying to show it for everyone listening. I'm just trying to show it, right? I have a question, because I'm not that smart. Is the emulsion the final formula? Because when you talk about, like, where do abrasives fit in with the surfactant, and then like all this term, is the final formula the final emulsion, or where does the abrasives fit in with the surfactants and emulsion?
So, I mean, when we started to talk, like, you wanted to build this, I'm like, oh man, I'm right there. I'd like to go back to the drawing board, because CSI is way beyond System 1 days. I don't have to prove that you can do this with one single product anymore. I mean, we've been doing it now. 3D's doing it now. 3M's doing it now. Everybody's, said we're going.
I told you when McGuire's brought back Solo 1, I about lost my mind. I just could, and then they're just trying to deny that not that they ever did it, but that it worked before. I'm like, no, it didn't. You guys copied system. Like, it's just insane to me, which is a huge motivator to starting my own brand and then finding the actual sources like you, because
I want to help you. I really want to help you too.
When
I want to help you. It helps me. All of this stuff helps me to go backwards. Like, okay, yeah. I mean, System 1 really didn't dust at all. Zero. I mean, it didn't dust. I know one of my sales guys, he liked to wear black shirt, black pants, black hat, black everything. And he would do a System 1 demo and he wouldn't be dirty. If I do a demo with CSI, I'm trying to get it done and I am a mess. I mean, there is dust that comes off of CSI, but who cares?
It's a different market. Yeah. 100%. 100%. I know that for, because the market that I'm going for, the detailer, the kind of at-home enthusiast that wants to get a good result with their car, even my personal preference is I don't like dusting. And for
Mhm.
some reason in the detailing space, I completely understand it for the auto body space, which is where CSI plays, right? Like,
Uh-huh.
because the product, the end result is far superior than anything out there. It really is.
Yeah.
But I know for the detailing space, the second a product starts dusting, they think it's
Yeah.
old school. They won't give it they won't give it
Yeah.
another look.
Well, I can't wait. I can't wait to get in the lab and try this. I think, and like you were talking about, what is an emulsion?
Mhm.
Um, the emulsion is everything. It has it, you know, it you can tap an emulsion out with everything. I can tap it out with aluminum oxide. I can break it. But it gets harder once you connect the dots with like CSI, Ceramics, and Ceram XX. There's about 15 different products in there. The first
15 different raw
couple,
materials in
yeah,
there.
15
Okay.
different raw materials in there.
Okay.
And I'm including water too. So water being the first one. In the beginning, it's super fragile. I mean, you have to be really careful chemistry wise. But as you start to build this, it starts to get stiffer and stiffer and stiffer. And I'm watching for the emulsion to happen. I'm watching for.
Oh, you could see it happen.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Oh yeah.
wow.
Oh
Interesting.
yeah.
Okay.
It takes a while.
Okay.
It's about an 8-hour process to make ceramics.
Okay.
And as it starts to whip and bind and come together, you start to see it get
Oh.
creamier and creamier and creamier. It's like, all right, it's coming together. Yeah. And then I can put in, so aluminum oxides, this is a chemistry all by itself. And there are specialists. You've seen our water system, and it is the absolute best water system that I've ever had in the 30 years of doing this. And I've had everything, reverse osmosis and DI. But this one, the system we have now is by far the most expensive system that I've ever had. And it is the best system that I've ever had. Because if you don't get this right, this starts to work on longevity when you have, it's called a retain. So you take a retain from every batch and you put them on the shelf, and 2 years later I go back to that retain and I look at that retain, I compare it to the formula, and I check it against my percentages and go, what am I seeing when I evaluate that retain? Am I seeing any separation in that retain? And then
Batch
I go,
sample would be
okay,
another word for that. Batch
yeah,
sample.
yeah,
Okay.
batch
Okay.
sample, yeah.
Okay.
So it is really, really important to keep a retain on everything we do, because if a customer calls me and says, hey, this product, okay, where do you live? Well, I live in Alaska and it was 40 below zero last. Okay, well, there's a problem. There's a problem.
Right.
Our water-based product just blew completely apart because that happened to it. Because it's a fragile product made to work in a normal climate.
Okay.
Don't allow it to freeze, and don't allow it to get, don't start boiling it, above 150 degrees.
Because I think so that's why we always hear, like, when products are freezing or shipping to cold temperatures too, like that's because of the freezing, because of the water in it, in those
Mhm.
products, it throws off the whole
Oh yeah.
emulsion of it.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to ask earlier, it might sound a little off topic now, but what is the difference between a compound and a polish? Like, why would one be called a compound and one be a polish?
I mean, I don't think any person, even a 3M, would say there's a definitive answer for compound and polish. I want to define it as a formulator, and to me, and why, you know, and again, I'm an old, grumpy 65-year-old guy. And we say our message is take all compound and throw it in trash can. All compound. So if they put the word compound on it, get it out of my shop. There's no reason to use compound ever when we have all of these polishes that do a great job. And I'm not
so
just
what
saying
is it
ours.
what is it about the compound? If someone calls something a compound, I mean, is heavy cut compound like, oh my God, is that just like, is that insane to you? You know, but like why do you say that? Why do you say throw compound in the
where it
trash?
becomes insane. Again, we have to look at the science. If I was polishing a 2-inch plate of plexiglass, who cares? Use compound. Doesn't matter. I'm never going to hurt that big 2-inch piece of plexiglass. But when I'm polishing paint that is the thickness of a cellophane wrapper on a pack of cigarettes, now it does matter. And there is a lot of liability to any person who's touching a car with compound, because you possibly are destroying the mill thickness of that material. And I think that, I mean, the idea of heaven and hell, I love that concept. Mm-hmm. If I'm, going towards heaven, oh yeah, cool, that's good. But if I'm going towards hell, well, that's not good. That's not good. And I think about paint the exact same way. If you are touching paint and you, knowing or unknowingly, hurt my paint, I necessarily can't come back to that person, because it might be a year before my paint job starts to fall off my car. Mm-hmm. But somebody is responsible for my paint now being thin and the UV barriers in that clear breaking down and that clear coat falling off my car.
This is a topic that is getting brought up more and more lately in the detailing space, for sure. Of when we talk about that, because everyone was chasing perfect paint, no scratch, perfect paint. And then I don't know who it was. It could have been Mike Phillips. It could have been Ivan. I don't really, Jason Rose. I don't really know who started the conversation, but I think it's a very, very interesting conversation to have of, we can chase perfect, but at what expense?
Exactly.
So I think that is a very good discussion that's been happening. And people are really resonating with that in the detailing space of like, hey, we want to get paint as perfect as possible without compromising the clear.
Well,
right?
let me because I want to take you down a rabbit trail.
Do it.
Because all of these things lead me back to making the products the way that I make them. I obviously have been painting cars for a long, long time. And at my dad's body shop, where my brother and I sanded the windows on my dad's car he was going to flip, paint jobs were $600. And I thought, wow, that's a lot of money. But that's way back in the early 70s. As I got older, I watched my dad do an acrylic lacquer paint job on a Buick Wildcat for one of the rich guys in our little town. And, I got to be the hands and, to help him do something that he was totally getting into. And I watched him do this black lacquer paint job on this Buick Wildcat, 30 coats of hand rubbed lacquer. It was beautiful. Everybody loved it. I just saw how my dad lit up. I saw how all the people lit up. And I think these are the things that would lead me into doing restoration paint work. And I think my dad charged $1,000 for that paint job. It took a long time, cost, there's a lot of material. Now I moved to California in 1978 and we were getting $1,500 to paint a Corvette. And that was a lot of money. Fully stripped to bare fiberglass, primer, paint, buff, no swirl marks, really nice acrylic enamel or synthetic enamel paint job. Not great materials, but good. And they look nice. now I start my own body shop, 1980, and I am like, we're putting a ton of labor into these cars. And I go, I got to charge more. Well, the market's not going to bear it. And you talk yourself out. And I hope this resonates with a lot of detailers too, because your time, if you are being honest with yourself, your time is important. Who cares what it costs? Are you being honest with yourself? It's one thing. Oh, I have to be honest with my customer. No, you got to be honest with everybody. I got to be honest with my wife. I got to be honest with my son, who's growing up at that time, and he needs stuff, and I got to be honest with the customer. So our paint jobs went to probably $5,000, and we were putting a lot of time into them. I don't know that I was making any more money, but at least I was getting paid for my labor. What's the difference between that $5,000 paint job in 1985 and when I sold Tom's Auto Body in 2008, and paint jobs were $150,000? I mean, big difference. And I mean, now I'm paying skilled people to do exactly what I wanted, because we're all looking and chasing perfect paint. Now, I tried to do perfect paint when I did those paint jobs that were $5,000, and I find myself burning through the edges. I need to put more paint on. Well, it's not a simple process. I got to go back in the spray booth, sand down the whole car, and repaint the car. So the next paint job is like, okay, we need to put more paint on. Well, am I charging more? Because don't go in the spray booth and put more paint on if you're not going to charge more. By the time, 2008, and we're highly skilled, highly desirable as a body shop, getting paid. I have great clients. We would put 2 complete paint jobs on a car. Whoa. We paint it, let it sit for a couple days, scuff it all down, block it all out, reblock the whole car, making it even straighter. Don't go through. And then repaint the car completely again. It's a big process because you've already put color on the car. Let's say it's black. Now you have to go in the booth, clean the booth has got to be perfect. The painter's got to be perfect. And then we're going to repaint the car normally with clear. And out comes this car that's been painted twice. So now our first cut for color sanding is 500 grit. And it takes about 2 to 3 days to color sand the car, because now you're doing the last block on the car. You're making sure every ripple, and if you saw a wave or a dent, you start over. I mean, these are really, really, so you're chasing that perfect paint. And the same thing in detailing. If a detailer who doesn't know how much paint is on that car starts to chase perfection and hasn't pre-warned his customer, then he's at fault for not being honest. I tell anybody that goes to any of our classes, you need to sit with your customer. I can give you anything, any level you want. I'm going to get paid for it. And if I burn through chasing what you want, it's not my fault, because I'm pre-warning you. I'm going to make this paint thinner. And I think it's really, really important that as we chase, we all dive in, and it's almost like we fall into a pool, and I'm just like mesmerized by the depth that I'm getting in this paint, which is super, super fun, but can be very dangerous if I did not pre-warn the customer. Because now all the liability falls on me, and possibly I go out of business because I destroy a Ferrari, because I didn't pre-warn the customer. But I think that is something that detailers need to seriously think about, especially on a factory paint job. I get lots of people, new Corvette C8, beautiful car, full of orange peel. I mean, they need to be detailed. Every car that General Motors does needs to be, they need to go look at a Lexus and say, that's the kind of paint job that I want on my Corvette. They don't do that. So we bring a Corvette in, we color sand and buff it. It costs a lot of money to do that, but you have to warn them. Like, okay, we're going to thin out your paint. There's enough paint here that we can make it look really nice, but we are taking off material to make it look like a Lexus.
Mm-hmm. Do you think more detailers should walk around with paint thickness gauges then and
You're
do
not
some
going to be able
readings?
to. No, you won't be able to get a read on the clear. The paint thickness gauge is totally false. It's a false positive. It's like, yeah, you're going to measure the total thickness of all materials, but you're not going to measure clear coat. And the only way you're going to measure the clear coat is sand through the clear.
Oh, so okay, here we go. Nuggets coming out, right? Like, because that's what a lot of people are saying is like, well, you need to be taking measurements of the clear or the paint before you get started, and they'll show like, oh, it's really thick here, it's thin here, it must have been repainted, and that's cool too. But it's like, I always thought, okay, that's interesting because it's just measuring the total volume of product.
Yeah.
Not just so there's no paint thickness gauge that can measure clear only.
I've had this argument discussion with a couple people, and they say there is an X-ray machine, and we're not talking about anything you're going to have in your shop. But
so this is not on Amazon. You can't buy this on Amazon and get it delivered later.
No, it's like an MRI machine that measures thicknesses of different substrates. It's like, you've got to be kidding me. That is, how many millions of dollars does that cost? So yeah, it's a base. And I have the best mill gauge. I have a mill gauge reader for fiberglass. I have one for aluminum. I have one for paint, for regular steel. None of them will measure individual substrates. It will measure overall thickness.
So compound is just too aggressive. That's basically why you say that.
Normally diminishing abrasive. I'm only speaking from my definition. They may say, well, no, we build a compound with non-diminishing. And it's like, why do you waste your time doing that? Why don't you just come out with one single product to do everything? Well, then I'm not going to sell a lot of products. Exactly.
Oh, okay. I see. Wow. Okay. Because a diminishing abrasive is more aggressive. So then if you're going to do that, you would want, if you're going to like compound a car, quote unquote, you would actually want a diminishing abrasive because it would cut faster.
Well, I mean, that is the prehistoric thought pattern, rocks in a bottle. That's what I call it. And that's what I say to any chemist who I'm talking to, because I'm going to show them a Ferrari and I'm going to show them a, multi-million-dollar car. And I say, you burn that car and you're buying it. You're buying the whole car. You're not buying a new paint job because I don't want that car anymore.
So the risk is just so great. That's why you're saying throw it in the trash, because the risk reward, when you look at that, it's just not worth the risk to hit it.
When you look at diminishing abrasive and the way that it works, little balls, blow them up, they're big balls. Now you break them down, you hit it with a wool pad, you break them down, but they're not all broke down. There's a whole bunch of stray ones on the outside. You can't
break them down evenly.
Yeah, you can't break them down evenly. Okay. They pop like pop rocks. You put pop rocks in your mouth and they're popping all over the place. Well, some of them aren't popped. If I spit them out, there's still some big ones in there.
And you also can't see which ones you've broken down.
Yeah,
got it. Okay.
And now if you don't fully wash that car and you hit it with a foam pad, I still got big rocks in there. Now I got cross-contamination in the second step, and it's a nightmare. Now I'm chasing scratches that weren't even there before. And now I'm not being honest to the customer. I'm causing work to happen.
Right.
The customer paid me to do a job and I'm making work.
Well, so that's always what's interesting to me. And maybe it's a different discussion, but I'm always like, okay, so you like hit it with a product, but then you remove one thing to leave another thing. And then you got to use another product to remove that other thing. I'm like, huh, that's interesting.
And we have mill thickness that's really thin.
Yes.
So all the time I've got paper thin paint on the car. All cars are paper thin. And paper is probably thicker than the clear on your car.
Interesting. So that begs the question then, if we're going to only be polishing cars, and from what it sounds like, I don't want a compound in my line, I want to polish.
No. Yes.
How do you make a polish aggressive enough to, and I guess here's the hard part, like, how do you make a polish aggressive enough to cut, but not too aggressive to where you're damaging the clear on a car?
Yeah, so this will be an interesting experiment, and I'm glad to go down this with you.
Okay.
One, it'll be fun for me. I've got all the equipment. We have everything to go back to the beginning of System 1. I mean, that's really what you're asking. It's fun. So it's like they, cool. And boy, I wish I knew, because I want to run over there and do this for you. I'm just like, oh, I can't wait to go in there. The big problem is, if I put too much aluminum oxide in there, I'm going to give you dust. So in my brain, I'm going to write a formula. And the cool thing about, I love working with spreadsheets. I love math. And the way that I've designed this spreadsheet is, when I increase the water, it decreases all of the percentages of everything else. And if I know the percentage that I want to end up with for you on this first try for like the aluminum oxide, I'm hoping that I can give you the cut without giving you any dust. That is going to be the tricky part. I believe I can give you a super clean finish because I already have that emulsion. I believe I can give you absolute clarity at the end, no matter how much cutter I put in, because, XX is, full blown steroids. I mean, it gives a really nice finish. But it cuts, it'll cut anything. So it'll be, this will be a fun exercise. So have you thought about a color or anything you want to do there?
I think I want to do purple.
Okay.
I think I want to do that. I realized too that I'm going to have to start having conversations around pads. And so I need to reach out to a few people on that. So that may in turn dictate the color. And color something, like, I think color's something fun, but I'm like, I'm also not like 100% sold on it. And I also don't want someone to be thinking like, oh, that's just that, product relabeled, even though I'm going to show this whole entire thing. So I think purple to start, but I'm not sold on that. I really want, part of doing this in public too is to kind of get like everyone's feedback on it too. So for people watching and listening, like, please leave your feedback. Because one thing I do also want to try and do and show as well is, I want to take people's feedback of compounds or now I don't even want to say compound of compounds or polishes that they think are the best. And I want you have a very unique machine that you're graciously willing to showcase that will we can compare, right? Because I really want to go into this very objective. Not subjective. I really want to go into this objectively, because ultimately I don't need to release a product unless it's truly better than what is offered in the marketplace. So if we can't make it better, which I'm confident that you can, but if it's not better, what's the point? Right. And so, because it already exists. And so I really want to be able to take feedback from people of, hey, this is my favorite. This is the one I think. We'll obviously do it with 3D1, but I want to put it on that machine and compare it to these samples that you make. Is there a benefit to a sprayable polish? I'm only going to call it polish now. Okay. It'll be Jimbo's polish. Is there a benefit to having a sprayable polish versus a liquid polish? A long time ago, Optimum Polymer Technologies had a sprayable, they had a compound and a sprayable polish. I could never get it to work for me. I just didn't like it. But I could see how it could be beneficial to maybe pad dispersion or an equal, not that it sprays equally. But anyway, is there any benefit to having a spray versus a liquid?
So this is really, really interesting too. So this takes me way back in the beginning when the salespeople are trying to sell me their version of skincare raw materials, skincare product raw materials. And I talked to one sales guy, and obviously he thinks his is the best, and this other guy thinks his is the best. And this one guy comes in, and he's showing me this thickening agent, and there's it's a clear bottle tube, and there's a marble right in the middle. It looks like Vaseline. It's like, okay, what's that? He goes, this is our thickening agent. I go, okay. And he says, this is Thixotropic. I'm like, okay, that's, I'm a body man. I don't know what you're talking about, Thixotropic. And he shakes it up, and this marble instantly goes up and down just by moving it back and forth. He agitates the gel, and the marble goes up and down. And then when he stops, the marble stops right in the middle. I'm going, how in the world did that grab the marble in the middle of this liquid? And he goes, now watch this. In this gel, holding a marble, he sticks a tube inside there with a sprayer, and out comes, he's spraying with a sprayer this gel out of that. I'm like, what? He says, because I'm agitating this nano substrate, these are very, very fine nanometers of, you're making this water very, very thin when it's agitated. But when it's not agitated, it's gelled. I go, when you said sprayable, I'm like, oh, wow. I think we have the product. I think we can do this with this product. And I don't know if it would, but it would be fun. It'd be fun to try.
But because I was under the impression that like sprayable, I thought the Optimum products being sprayable, you use less because it's more aggressive. But I think I might be wrong in that thought. I've said that a few times, but the more I think about it, the more I'm like, maybe that's not accurate. Maybe they're just trying to be different, but there's really no inherent benefit to it being sprayable, right? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, other than the gimmick of, if I can take our Thixotropic product and make it sprayable, it'll cling to a vertical surface. So if I spray it on the side of the panel, I don't have to worry about it falling off. I don't know if that's, but I know our emulsion is going to do the same thing. It's going to stay.
What would a product, if you sprayed it, say you took a polish and you sprayed it and it ran down the panel, what would that tell you?
Well, okay. So if I get into the mindset of being a detailer, so we painted the car, we're getting ready to go to Pebble Beach. This car's perfect. I don't want the guys touching it. Everybody's got gloves on. You don't touch this car. This car is ready to go. Now, if somebody were to take something sprayable and it runs down inside the door jamb that we have just spent hours and hours and hours of cleanup, that would, I
got it, because it actually gives you less control being sprayable.
If it runs, I am going to flip out. I don't want anything running down in the jams.
Is it I guess with the Thixotropic, would it be possible to make it both? I guess that's what you're talking about with the Thixotropic, where
I think so.
Okay,
I think we could.
So it could be like a liquid for someone who wanted it, but then if you literally just put a sprayer on the bottle, and it would be a sprayable polish. So essentially you could do both. And because it sounds like it's more of a preference thing than like it's like gimmick preference versus anything. So I think for mine, if it could be both, because once you go liquid, you can't go back to cream. But if you're at cream, you could go to liquid. But if it's Thixotropic, you could do both.
Yeah.
Okay.
It'll be fun. It'll be a fun experiment. And it's not going to be hard for us. I'll try a batch. We'll come up with a formula, try a batch. We'll put the colorant that you want in there, and then you try it and see if you like it.
Okay. Well, I'm going to release this. I'll head up to your shop when you tell me the samples are made. I'm going to bring Bryant with me. We'll record a full video of showcasing the first sample. So I will title this podcast something like part 1. But for those listening and watching, this will be a multi-part series of honestly showcasing everything, kind of, showing up my skirt, if you will, because Tom is confident in his ability to make this stuff. I've seen it. I've experienced it myself as well. So I'm excited for that. Is there anything else, Tom, that you think should be talked about, at least in this first initial kind of discussion?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you're an experienced detailer. So that's what's so cool about me entering back into this realm. I tell anybody, our products would not be our products if I didn't have people like you, people that are going to be critical about what we're doing. Because, I think I've showed you the table that Bob came up with. He's like, Tom, and I had done all of Bob Berg's cars, my business partner with CSI. Throughout the 1980s, I did all of his automobiles. So he knew my skill level and body work. But if I go booth, or if I go in the back and I'm going to buff with it, and I'm going to say, oh, Bob, this is awesome, I buffed it. He goes, Tom, you are gone from that part of the equation. Right. I don't want you giving your opinion. I need to know and quantify that this does what we want every time over. And that was that robot that he came up. He invented a robot to test products. And before I got started with him, I used people to be my robots. This guy has this level. This guy has this level. This just gave it away to lots of people. Come back, tell me. I mean, and this was part of the nightmare story. Some of the products I did, whoa, okay, throw that formula away. That did not work. That did not do what I wanted it to do. But that's what built, these products. So coming back to what you want, this is fun. I mean, we're going to go in the sandbox. We're going to play with Hot Wheels right now. This will be fun to do.
And that's what I want it to be. That's what I'm excited that I can create content around this, because it's very exciting for me. It's one of my favorite, kind of places to be, and exactly why I wanted to have my own product line. And kudos to you for wanting the negative feedback too, which is also what I want. And I think at Turtle Wax, when I was working with Turtle Wax, that was one of the things that Darren told me very early on was, I don't need another yes man. I need someone to tell me that my stuff stinks. I need someone to tell me, and that's really valuable. So
was he the owner? He's the owner.
He's the CMO, but effectively he's effectively running the company, at least the development and the innovation, which is what I was helping them on. I was part of a team working in the global innovation team, and the whole purpose was, again, working with Mike, who's their in-house chemist, and they have a team of chemists there too, but working directly with the chemist, and kind of what I was talking about earlier of everything from ideation to actually making it. And then I was part of like, hey, Jimbo, does this work? Like, tell us if it works or not. Right. So I had the fortunate or unfortunate position of telling them it sucks or it's awesome. And that was it. And then they got to run with whatever they did with that information. Sometimes it sucked and they ran with it. Sometimes it was good and they didn't run with it. And but their responsibility, right? That was on them. I just was there to tell them whether it sucked or not. But I'll have videos on developing the character and doing the label and showing the label, and we'll go up there using the robot.
Cool.
My vision is to go up there when if we can, I guess we'll have to strategically look at that. But if you talked about the emulsion forming, if there's a way to film that and show that, I think that'd be super interesting. If it gets to, what I don't want to do is, I don't want to give the deep secret. This is not, I'm not going to be posting the formula online, because I know that there is, I call them ghost followers, right? There's the ghost followers that have ill intentions. And so I will showcase as much as we can without giving away the super sensitive stuff, which I think will be possible, though. I think we can give people a glimpse of behind the scenes like no one has ever done before. And I'm not talking about showing a tote and then a line from the tote to fill a bottle. That is not making a product. Okay.
Over the years, having the body shop and then learning, I don't know why I had like rabbit trails, or just like my body shop was successful, and now I want to go to college and I want to take some marketing classes, because this is way before social media. I mean, this is in the 80s, way before the internet, way before cell phones. And I went to Fullerton College, and I'm taking some marketing classes, and this is the veil being lifted off. Because we've all heard about the Coca-Cola formula. It's top secret. It's this, it's that. It's like, wait a minute. As a formulator, what is it? Water, caramel, sugar, okay. That's what it is. And so we're in a marketing class at Fullerton College, and you can look this up on YouTube. I mean, I'm sure there's lots of videos on this. Can you tell the difference between Pepsi and Coke? And everybody's like, of course I can. And you go online and you watch these YouTube videos. And this is the importance of a brand. A red label, Coca-Cola, a blue label, Pepsi. The importance of a brand. They take Pepsi and Coke and they switch them. You don't know what's in there. You're drinking a blue can and it has Coke in it, and your mind says it's Pepsi. You cannot not say that that's not Coke, because, or if you're drinking out of a Coke can and it has Pepsi in it, and vice versa. There's so many failures on people not getting it right. So, when the secret of making my product, is 30 years. So no matter what anybody finds out about my product, it's still going to take you 30 years. Do you want to go down that path? I want to have I want to get Tom's formula, and I want to do this, I want to do that. And I mean, I've had a lot of, and then I remember in the beginning, like being so worried, and I'm like, wait a minute, we went through 1,000 renditions to get to this formula here. Even if I gave it to a chemist, he's not going to be able to do it. He's not, or he runs it through a gas chromatograph and finds out everything that I have in it. He's still not going to be able to do it. So it's all good, man. And you have a desire to make this. We don't have a lot of parameters in there. One, clean, not dusting, cuts. It's like, okay, yeah, I think we can. I think we can get this. I think we can. So
you just gave me an idea. The ultimate challenge, if we get, I don't know how many videos this will end up being or anything, but I think as a last video, what we'll have to do is we will do a blind buff challenge where I have to see if I could pick out the final formula in a blind buff off. And see if that we'll have to do that. I'll probably forget. So I want to say it out loud.
A long time ago. And if Jason Rose is listening, I remember, and I didn't mean it in any mean way. I just like, Jason, let's do a buff off. Now, I think he might have taken it. I just wanted to get people together and buff with different products, So It would be fun if Jason would entertain that idea,
That'd be
but
interesting.
you know,
I could ask
we
Julio because Julio's over at Rupes, and I need to
yeah.
reach out for him for pads and talk to them about pads. So that I don't know, that'd be interesting.
And this
Uh,
is way in the beginning days of System One. And, you know, I had something that was totally different. Little did I know that it was the game changer. It
yeah.
was truly a product that stood the whole market up on
Mhm.
edge.
Well, and I
And
think the proof in that you did that is you had the juggernaut that is McGuire's copy you, like straight copy
they
with
were
their
the first.
solo
Yeah,
system. You know, they were the
yeah,
first, but
yeah. They were the first.
you know, they're that to have a massive company like that just so blatantly copy, in my opinion, so
Yeah,
blatantly
no,
copy.
they did, and it was a compliment to me.
Mhm.
It was because at this time I still think I'm doing crack, and I
Got it.
think the market thinks I'm doing crack
Got
because
it. Okay.
Tom has lost his mind that he thinks he can do this with one single product. So
I mean, McGuire's
when
even after solo, they even released D300, which was yet another attempt. They called it some like microfiber cutting. That was when they paired it with the microfiber cutting pad. But D300 was another one
oh was
liquid, changed the pad, and it didn't work either and
it?
failed.
Mm-mm.
You know, so it's that's what gives me confidence knowing that, like, hey, I like to go to the source, right? Everyone said, oh, we manufacture, we build. Yeah.
It was fun, you know, because I had offered this deal to 3M, and of course they said no. But to watch, I remember when Chip was, you know, part
Mm,
of 3M's program, and you can look this up. Chip Foose uses a single product. Now he claims this 3M product is the best product that 3M made, and I would have to agree because this is 3M's attempt to
mm.
copy System 1. Now they sand with 1500, 2000, 3000, 5000, and 8000 grit sandpaper.
Oh my
And they use a
god.
foam pad. It's like, are you
The paint's
kidding me?
paint's already perfect by the time you're
Yeah,
polishing it.
it's like, who's are you guys getting paid for all those labors?
Right.
You know,
Well,
because
3M makes sandpaper too, right? So
yeah,
they could sell more
exactly.
product.
At
They sell less
$100 a
liquid and more
sleeve,
paper.
you know? Yeah,
Yeah. Oh my
yeah.
gosh. Well, also before we go, Tom, you actually have a product line of your own too. So if people want to pick up your products, how can they find them? How can they find you? I know you're predominantly auto body, but there's still a lot of detailers and people that if they want a true correction, right? True
Yeah.
paint correction, how can they find your products that are currently available?
So we push, we have distributors, but mostly, you know, if I'm talking, you know, I'm going to push them to our website. We work with body shops, answer questions, and we sell on Amazon. We've got a strong Amazon presence too. So csishine.com. And, you know, you can find my phone number there and email address, and, you know, I'm available anytime to anybody.
Cool. I appreciate the time. We've recorded for an hour and 40 minutes, but
Oh, wow.
just so people know, like Tom has literally spent hours on the phone with me. I've been up to his facility a couple times, and you've been super gracious with your time and knowledge. And I'm excited to see where this goes. I have a lot of confidence in it, and I'm even more excited to kind of showcase it and kind of put my money where my mouth is when I bag on other companies, because I do feel bad, but I only bag on them because I know that it could be done better. And so I hope to give better products. And Tom, I'm excited for you to help me do that. So
Yeah, I
thank
want
you
to help
again.
you, man. I do.
Cool.